Hello and welcome! Today we're diving into something that feels like it's straight out of science fiction, neuromarketing. It's this incredible intersection of brain science and persuasion. And believe me, it is completely changing the game for how and why we buy things.
So let's just kick things off with a kind of wild idea. What if that bag of chips you're thinking about buying could actually read your mind? And I'm not talking about your conscious thoughts, the I should probably get the healthier option voice. I mean your deep, unfiltered gut reactions. Sounds a little crazy, right? Well, it's a lot closer to reality than you might think.
So how do we get from a wild question to actual real-world marketing? Well, it all starts with cracking what's called the Persuasion Code. This is all about a huge shift away from just asking people what they like and towards scientifically measuring what their brains truly want, often on a level they don't even know exists. This really gets to the heart of the problem with old-school marketing, right? You put someone in a focus group, and they might say, "Oh yes, I want the healthy apple," or "I prefer to read intellectual books." We all want to sound good. But our unfiltered brain activity? That might be telling a completely different story. A story that's probably screaming for pizza and video games. Neuromarketing is all about bypassing our social filters to get to that raw, honest truth of what we really desire.
Okay, so how in the world are companies listening in on our subconscious? Let's pull back the curtain a little bit on the tech that makes all of this possible. These are the tools that let researchers decode that silent conversation happening inside a consumer's brain.
So first up, you've got EEG. Just picture someone wearing a cap that's covered in all these tiny sensors. These sensors are literally picking up the little electrical sparks your brain fires off as you see or experience something. EEG is amazing because of its temporal resolution, which is just a fancy way of saying it can pinpoint the exact millisecond you had a good or bad reaction to an ad. It's all about the when. And then you have the big one, fMRI. So if EEG tells us when you reacted, fMRI tells us where. This is that giant tunnel-like machine. Basically, it tracks blood flow. See, when a part of your brain starts working harder, it means more fuel, so it calls for more oxygenated blood. fMRI sees that surge, and it shows us exactly which emotion centers or memory centers are lighting up when you look at a product. Now, all this data from EEGs and fMRIs is great, but what does it actually mean for a brand? Well, it really boils down to two super simple but incredibly powerful things. First, approach versus avoid. Is your brain subconsciously pulling you toward this thing, or are you instinctively pushing away from it? And second, emotional intensity. Just how strong is that feeling? Is it just kind of meh, or is it a passionate, I gotta have it kind of desire? And here's a little peek at the science behind it. To measure that approach or avoid instinct, they look at something called frontal alpha asymmetry, basically the balance of electrical chatter between the left and right front of your brain. And for emotional intensity, they look for a specific spike in brainwaves called the late positive potential. It's this clear signal that tells them just how much of an emotional wall-up something has. Okay, that's enough of the theory. Let's get to the fun part. How does this stuff go from a sterile lab and end up in your shopping cart? Because this isn't just academic research. Some of the biggest brands you know are using these exact techniques to shape your buying experience. I mean, just look at this list. You've got Frito-Lay using EEG to redesign chip bags, IKEA using behavioral mapping to literally architect their entire store, Coca-Cola using a whole mix of tools to make sure their ads hit you right in the feels. The big takeaway here is that these aren't just creative guesses anymore. These are decisions being backed up by hard neuroscience. Let's dig into that Frito-Lay example because it's fascinating. Their research found something totally unexpected. It turns out those shiny, glossy chip bags were actually triggering a tiny subconscious negative response in our brains. A feeling kind of associated with guilt. So what do? They switched to matte packaging. It's the perfect example of how a small change you might not even consciously notice can make a product way more appealing on a gut level. And what about IKEA? Ever feel like you're a little bit lost wandering through one of their stores? Yeah, that's not an accident. That is 100% by design. The maze-like layout is a carefully crafted journey that basically forces you to see almost everything they sell. This maximizes your exposure to their products, which dramatically increases the odds that you'll spot something you didn't even know you needed. All right, here's a fun one. I promise, once you see this, you will never be able to unsee it. Take a really close look at the FedEx logo. Have you ever noticed the arrow that's hidden in the negative space between the E and the X? That little arrow is an absolute masterpiece of subconscious messaging. It wasn't just some happy accident. The principles of neuromarketing tell us that this simple, hidden shape communicates speed, direction, and efficiency directly to our brain, completely bypassing our conscious thought. It's a tiny visual cue that builds trust and reinforces what the brand is all about, all without saying a single word. Now, you can probably see where this is going. All this power to influence our subconscious choices, it naturally leads to a really big, really critical question. Where do we draw the line? At what point does smart, persuasive science cross over into just plain manipulation?
And you know what? The critics have a really good point. As this quote points out, we have to be super careful of what some people call neurohype. Just slapping the word neuro in front of your marketing claim doesn't automatically make it solid science. It's a powerful buzzword, and we have to be smart enough to question it.
And that brings us to the most crucial point. As this technology gets more and more powerful, the ethical tightrope we're walking on gets thinner and thinner. We have to balance all this cool innovation with really serious issues, like our privacy, the potential to exploit our vulnerabilities, and the absolute need for companies to be transparent about what they're doing. The goal should be to make genuinely better products, not just to find a secret backdoor into our wallets.
Which brings us to our final, and honestly, our most important section, the so what. How does all this science and marketing theory affect you right now as you're just going about your day making choices?
Okay, get ready for a number that is truly mind-blowing. According to researchers at Harvard, up to 95% of all our purchasing decisions are not made by our logical, conscious mind. 95%. Nope. They're made deep in our subconscious, totally driven by emotion, instinct, and all these little mental shortcuts we've built up over our lives.
So I'll just leave you with this thought. The next time you're shopping, whether you're scrolling online or walking down an aisle, and you feel that little tug, that irresistible pull to add something to your cart, just pause for a second and ask yourself, is that really me choosing? Or is it a part of my brain that a very smart marketer somewhere out there has just learned how to whisper to directly? It really makes you think, doesn't it?